we'll be starting this first session. It's an informative session about cost, in which, of course, our colleagues from Cost Association will introduce, first of all, the program, the main features of the program, etc., but also at the technical level, how to take advantage of cost, how to participate, how to make good use of this wonderful tool. We are a little bit late, so without delay, I would like to invite Dr. Ronald De Bruyn pour faire sa présentation, to introduce the program, cost. Then we'll be having Mr. Bart Weiss, I hope it's spelled right, who is policy officer at Cost Association, and who will get more into details about the participation aspect, about how to take advantage of this program. Without delay, I will introduce Dr. Ronald De Bruyn, please.
Presentation is So I need a little bit of kind assistance, and while the assistance is in motion, I just wanted to indeed connect to the previous conversation that there is excellence in the room. I just learned indeed that you have an award-winning scientist here in our midst. At the same time, I'm completely convinced that the room is full with talent, and there's a lot of potential that needs to be unlocked. And just about the acronym of COST, which of course sometimes needs a little bit of explanation, but just to make a long story short, cost is a benefit. That is what I will try to convey to you. Now, cost in its origin, since 1971, was set up as an intergovernmental organization, and we currently have almost 40 countries that are a member of COST, that are fully participating, let's say, in the COST framework. Just to give you a little bit of an idea on cost, what we typically do is fund the establishment and the running of networks. And networks is something that we call in our speak cost action. So a cost action is running for typically a period of 4 years. And we have, as I speak, nearly 300 of those networks running. What they typically offer is a number of tools that allow you to network. So it's not only about conferences, it's also about training schools on particular topics. And I think a very popular, let's say, tool that we have is the so-called short-term scientific missions. So that means that if you are a participant of a cost action, you can go to an organization elsewhere in the network that will act as a host for a couple of weeks or even months if you would like. We are currently serving around 45,000 researchers in our community, and the Horizon2020 program has endowed us with an envelope of around 300 million. I should at the same time be very clear about the fact that COST does not fund the research itself. We fund the networking. So by offering the networking opportunities, we mobilize all different kinds of researchers and also innovators, by the way, to come together, which in their portfolios build on their, let's say, research projects, either funded nationally or also in the European Framework Program, of course. Our estimate is that this roughly mobilizes a collective, let's say, portfolio in the order of magnitude of 2.5 billion euros. Now, I will try to demonstrate in quite simple terms that cost is very, very easy to access. So how it works. Here I have a very, let's say, rudimentary way of explaining that, of course, any project, any endeavor starts with a good idea. And in this case, we have somebody who puts the idea forward in a proposal. This is a Portuguese main proposer, if you recognize the flag, joined by a number of secondary proposers. We have put a minimum number of countries to submit a proposal, a minimum of 7, out of which at least 50%, so in this case at least 4, have to come from what we call, and I will go into a bit more detail about that, an inclusiveness target countries. These are countries where the research, let's say, ecosystem is less developed than in other parts of Europe. So we try to be inclusive, let's say, from the beginning by putting this as a requirement for submitting a proposal. Now, this is not something that is very different from, let's say, any Horizon 2020 project, and it will not be very different in Horizon Europe either. The unique feature of cost, however, is that without having submitted a proposal, you can be appointed by your country to be part of the management committee, so the collective of countries that are running this particular action. And these people are appointed by what we call a cost national coordinator, or in the jargon of the Horizon 2020 framework is the NCP, the National Coordination Point, based on their expertise relevant to the topic of the network. This is just to say that this is the formal management committee. The network is also open for other countries, like in particular also Tunisia. We call those countries near neighbor countries. You are our neighbors, European neighbors. But it doesn't stop there. Actually, the cost action is open to any participant in the world. But there are, of course, limits in terms of how we can reimburse people for their expenditures. A bit more about that later. Now, here we see a little bit of a development over time of what we call the inclusiveness target countries, here marked in green. And you see that there is an ever-increasing participation of those countries. So it is very clear that cost is very appealing for countries to join and to meet their peers and colleagues for exchanges that they otherwise would never have. And now it's about 50-50. And this is also something that I have not seen in any other framework program so far. Now, just to give you an example, there are all different kinds of outcomes that a network can have, but you may remember this picture. Have you seen this last year in the news? It's obviously, also for the non-physicists among you, a black hole. At least there's a little black hole in the middle, I see. There was a cost action running that worked on the algorithms to calculate the establishment of the image that, in the end, resembled this very sharp picture of a black hole. This was the first picture of a black hole ever taken, and a cost action made a valuable contribution to that. It also goes down, excuse me, to the personal level. Here we have a Slovenian researcher who basically gives a testimony of the fact that cost is super inclusive. You meet a diverse range of peer colleagues in a very efficient way. This lady is an Italian, half Polish colleague who said, well, it really boosted my career because I've learned more in cost than otherwise I would have learned in 10 years. And she did not say it like that, but sitting in my laboratory in splendid isolation. So it's really something that was really inspiring to me. This gentleman here is someone who works for a small and medium enterprise. And the benefit for this gentleman is that in a cost network, since we are not funding research itself, the topic of intellectual property rights protection is not really on the table. So that means that ideas are exchanged freely in, let's say, a non-protective way, And that helps this gentleman to get the inspiration on what is state of the art, what are the developments to take into account in the further development of his business. Something completely different, but still a very important, I would say, impact of the cost activity is that a number of countries, and quite a few, as a matter of fact, have chosen to put in place a national funding scheme for cost participants. So that means, for example, in the case of the Czech Republic, that they have a specific call for the Czech cost participants, who will then be able to retrieve funding for, indeed, the infrastructure expenditures and the salary expenditures that cost typically does not cover in these networking funding. So Latvia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Turkey, even Bulgaria, I learned recently, has a scheme like that in place, Switzerland. And, we always say that the Swiss are known for their banking, let's say, skills. So we assume that they would not put their money on something if it is not a return on investment. Now, looking a little bit ahead. Indeed, reference was made to the fact that Horizon Europe is around the corner. This is a transitionary period. Those of you who have followed the news are aware that actually today there is a European summit where an attempt is made, a very brave attempt is made, to come to an agreement on how to divide the budget breakdown for the entire European Union budget, and also, of course, what should the size of the total envelope be, with the UK, to our regret, having left the European Union. So we have already done our homework 2 years ago, and we prepared ourselves for the future. We have put ourselves, let's say, in the heart of the European research area. That means the European research area where knowledge, but also researchers can freely circulate. And that is, I think, a very important good, because indeed, excellence, as I mentioned it before, has no borders. There's excellence everywhere, and I just can only reconfirm again that also here we have a room packed with excellent people. So what is our focus? And we focused on 3 strategic priorities. First and foremost, obviously, promoting, but also spreading excellence. The second thing is the high emphasis on interdisciplinary research. And this is something that COST is very good at, for the simple reason that in our call, it's an open call, where every, let's say, 8 to 9 months we collect the proposals that are submitted. We do not prescribe any particular topic. So anyone with a good idea can submit a proposal. As a consequence of that, we have a high degree of proposals that combine different scientific disciplines. So the level of interdisciplinarity is very high. At the same time, due to our unique evaluation process, we see that if you look at the proposals that are approved in the end, you see that there's the same level of interdisciplinarity that gets awarded, let's say, a contract. This is very different from, let's say, the classic funding agencies where, let's say you have evaluation panels that are categorized per discipline. So you have a panel for engineering, you have a panel for chemistry, you have a panel for social sciences. But what if your proposal is covering more than one area? You fall somewhere in between, and the typical, let's say, phenomenon what you see is that although there is interdisciplinary proposals coming in, the level of interdisciplinary proposals that get approved is less compared to what got in. And this is not the case at COST, due to the bottom-up nature of the call. So interdisciplinarity is key. It's key also for innovation, because by looking at challenges from different perspectives at the same time, you get additional insights that lead to breakthroughs. And last but not least, of course, we are also here to boost the careers of young researchers, to provide the opportunities to participate in pan-European collaborations, to get some experience also in terms of leadership responsibilities, leading a working group, leading a task, etc. 85% of our community members have indicated that cost or participating in cost boosted their careers. 85%. Now, okay, so if you participate in cost and you meet your fellow, let's say, researchers, there are all different kinds of possibilities, apart from conferences, training schools, short-term scientific missions that you can benefit from. But of course, these people, let's say, meet and discuss how they can work together in submitting proposals to other parts of the Horizon 2020 framework program or other funding areas. And we systematically survey our cost activities on this one. And it appears that if a proposal is submitted or originates from a cost action, the success rate in Horizon 2020 is 37%. The average is about 11, 12. So that raises your success rate with a factor 3. I am aware that the success rate of the Tunisian community is 18%. Right? So that's already extremely good. So that's also confirming, of course, the level of excellence that is here. So the point is that cost, of course, can offer you an opportunity. My colleague will go into a bit more detail about how, what steps do I need to take. So I don't want to already cover part of my colleague's presentation. But I can tell you that if you look at the map, and we have two maps here. Of course, the same map, but different colors. So the one on the left, you see some areas or countries that have a very dense color red, and some are a bit more transparent. That left map represents the absolute number of researchers participating in costs from that country. So typically you see UK, you see Spain, France, Italy, Germany in dark color, and the others have more transparent colors. If you look on the right, the color code is showing something different. It shows the participation level relative to the size of the community. So if, for example, you have a small community like in Iceland, if you look at the proportion of those researchers participating in cost, it's very high. You see the Balkans, you see Cyprus, you see Malta. In Malta, it's 1 out of 3 of the community, and in Cyprus, it's 50% of the community participating in cost. In essence, everyone benefits. Now, zooming out even a little bit more, you see in this color coding, this blue, let's say, area around the cost countries. This is what we call the near neighbor countries. And for those countries, we have the possibility to also reimburse the expenditures of participants like we do with the cost member participants. South Africa, here in a different color, has recently joined as a partner member. They committed themselves to put aside a national budget to cover for the expenditures, because the limit of what cost can fund is its own members in the near neighbor countries, because we have a modest envelope of 300 million euros. Without going into a lot of detail, this is just to illustrate that if you look at the proposals that we collect, you see a high degree of interdisciplinarity, so all these bubbles represent different kinds of scientific disciplines that have cross-links and so forth. About the boosting of careers, what you see here on the screen is a typical academic career ladder, from student all the way to full professor. And in the European Framework Program, we see that depending on the stage on the career ladder, different funding mechanisms, funding instruments are in place, from Erasmus Plus to all the way to a European Research Council advanced grant. Cost ties all those people together. In our networks you find PhD students and you find Nobel Prize winners, including the Nobel Prize winner for physics of last year is also there. Just to illustrate a little bit who actually benefits from cost, we typically see, excuse me, that the younger generation, let's say between 25 and 40, is very well represented. And also, if you look at the gender balance, it's more than 40% of females. And here it's very clear that Tunisia outperforms completely, let's say, our European friends here when it comes to gender balance in the representation of female researchers. Tunisia is represented in 34 of the nearly 300 actions. In other words, there is plenty of scope to investigate if you could potentially benefit from participating in actions. So 300, here 34, so that's an open invitation, but we'll go into the details of that. And here you see also a little bit of an illustration. Where do people, let's say, go to when they participate in an action? So if you go to a training school, conference, short-term scientific mission, so you go everywhere. So cost is a benefit, offers you an opportunity to meet others, offers you a pre-portal, a stepping stone. And after having talked to the colleagues here in Tunisia, also in Brussels, but also here, also the representative from the European Commission here, it's very clear that this is completely in line with the ambition of Tunisia. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give a final illustration of our, let's say, portfolio. Obviously, our core business is about supporting the actions, but we have added value services as well. So if you are a participant, you can also benefit from training. We have a cost academy where people can get training, for example, on how to do the financial management of an action. We have trainings on how do I communicate effectively about scientific progress that we are making. Another example that we do is organizing stakeholder events on topics that are very high on the political agenda, often with the Commission participating, and is also often hand in hand with the announcement of calls for proposals, where people are suddenly finding themselves in the room with their friends participating in the development of a new proposal. We have, and I would also like to mention that, we have, of course, actions that after 4 years show some innovation potential. And this innovation potential can be explored further. And that is why we are now piloting, as I speak, with an add-on grant. So it's an extra year of funding for those actions that have shown innovation potential, to explore this further, either to bring it to the market or to better position themselves for follow-up funding. Ladies and gentlemen, I stop here. I am sure that you have plenty of questions. My colleague Bart Vijs is ready to go, I think. But of course, I should hand back to the moderator of this session and thanking you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. De Bruin. This is a really interesting tool, program, in which, of course, we can support networking, in which we can put focus on excellence, on interdisciplinarity, but also promote careers of young researchers, and we have many of them very interested to attend this session. And also, I'm glad to learn that Tunisia is participating in 10% of the actions under cost, which is a good thing. But I believe we can develop further. So now let's go to the how to develop further. And I would like to introduce Mr. Bart Weiss, who is Program Officer for Cost Association, and who will be sharing with us tips on how to take best use and best advantage of this program. Please.
Voilà, there it is. Bonjour à tous. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bart Weiss. I work as a policy officer in cost, and I will tell you a bit more on the let's say the details of a cost action. So, what are cost actions, and then how to get involved. This will be the subject of let's say a more practical workshop after other testimonies and a short break. But first of all, I will tell you a bit what the cost actions are. So. What can you expect if you apply to participate in a cost action? So what are cost actions? Cost actions, as said before and as mentioned before, are a network. So we do not fund research, but we fund all kind of networking activities. So you get the chance to meet and to work with colleagues across Europe and beyond on very specific fields which cost action is dealing with. And for this we have all kind of tools, all kind of instruments in place which you can use in order to achieve your objectives. So a cost action is of course based on a memorandum of understanding. This is, let's say, laying out the main objectives, the main principles of a cost action. So each of the 300 cost actions have a memorandum of understanding. This will be useful for you if you're looking for actions to see what they are doing, what is the scope, what kind of activities are planned, what kind of stakeholders are being involved in the action. So I will come back to this later, but it's an advice to read the MOU before, of course, joining a cost action. It's more or less the Bible, I would say, for a cost action. A cost action runs for 4 years. This is a defined period. Some actions will have a bit of a longer time frame, as I just explained with the Cost Innovators Grant, but the normal period is 4 years. There's a minimum of 7 countries which apply for the cost action. So each cost action has a minimum of 7 countries involved. But this, of course, grows over time, as you already have seen before. And on average, there are 27 countries involved in a cost action. So if you join a cost action, you will get the chance to meet with colleagues and peers from all around Europe. What do we do? These are research, coordination and capacity building activities. So no funding for research, but really to build capacity and to coordinate your research in specific fields. This sounds a bit abstract, but if you would read a few memorandum of understandings, you will get a better view on what this actually includes and what this means. And over a lifetime, so over the 4 years, the cost actions receive over 500,000 euros. Of course, this is a bit less when there are less countries involved. It's a bit more when more countries join the activities. So cost action features are open and expandable. They're open to all type of stakeholders. So they're open to not only academic institutions, but also to companies. So if you work for an SME, for example, you can join a cost action. They're open for all career levels, from PhD to very established and well-known researchers. Even Nobel Prize winners are part of cost actions. And you can join a cost action at any time. So you can join a cost action, well, any time is not exactly correct. You can join in the first 3 years of a cost action. Joining in the last year would not be really beneficial to have a lot of activities to be involved in. But the first 3 years you can join a cost action. It's bottom up. We do not define any topic at all. You can come with your ideas to us, and then it goes through a whole evaluation procedure, and then you are awarded or not with your proposal. It's flexible and light administration. You're in close contact with the science officers if you are part of a cost action. And every year there's a discussion on what the action will do, what the objectives will be, what the budget will be, and so on. And of course we focus on output and impact. If you have a cost action or you join a cost action, we also expect some results in the end. So research coordination and capacity building objectives. These are all the networking tools we have available. There's the management committee meeting, which is the core of the cost action. This is the core management. They are deciding on, let's say, the bigger objectives and the longer time frame. As a near neighbor country, Tunisia is a near neighbor country, you can have 2 observers at every management committee meeting. It's without voting rights, but you can see what they're doing, what they're planning, and of course this is one of the tools in order to meet the core people of this cost action. There's the working group. Every cost action has 4 to 5 working groups where the real work happens. So there's a general objective of each cost action, but then of course this is divided into several parts where you work on specific topics which of course contribute to the overall objectives. And as a Tunisian researcher, you can join these working groups and contribute to these activities. You can organize conferences in cost. We provide funding for that. These are, of course, ideal tools to get your research out of your country, out of your university, and present it to the wider European research area. There are all kind of course, rules linked to these networking tools. I will not go into too much details, but we provide support to organize these meetings and conferences from A to Z. So all your travel is reimbursed, your accommodation, the local organizer. Imagine a meeting is organized here, then you can get local organizer support in order to have these meetings organized. The training schools, a very interesting tool. So these are, of course, also linked to the objective of the cost action. And these are in-depth trainings for a smaller group of people with experienced trainers and trainees go to a training school, let's say for 1 week or 2 weeks, where they learn from experts in their field what are the new developments, what is the state of the art, what is going beyond this, and also all in line with, of course, the cost action objectives. Then there are the scientific missions. So if you join a cost action, you can apply for a scientific mission. You can go to another university, to another lab, to another research group in the UK, in Denmark, in Germany, you name it. So and we pay all your travel costs, all your accommodation costs, which are linked to this visit. This often results in academic papers. You get, of course, a very good knowledge of what people are doing in other parts of Europe. So this is a very interesting tool. And then you bring this knowledge back to your country. And by this, we're actively also stimulating brain circulation in the European research area. And then we have funding for dissemination activities. So you can get your final results published in a book. You can co-author articles, which we will fund if they're open access, of course. We have funding for websites for dissemination tools like flyers and so on. So these are all the networking tools we have available and which you can use when you join a cost action. A cost action is composed by, as I said before, a management committee and a grant holder, and there you see the working groups. Of course, going into more detail of the action, and then there are some horizontal groups: the STSM coordinator, the scientific communications manager, and this is the core group of the cost action. So this is how a cost action looks. It's very brief, and all of this is supported by the cost association in Brussels. And if we in the workshop go through all the steps on how to get involved in cost, you will see some of these terms coming back, because you will need approval from some people in order to join a cost action. But this will be explained in full detail a bit later. So why in the end do we fund networking? Because this is actually about knowledge sharing. If you share knowledge, this is advancing science and research for the better, because you get an understanding of what other people are doing. If you're alone in your lab or your university and you're doing all kind of experiments, but you do not know if things went right or wrong already before. It's good to talk to people, to meet people, not only to read papers, but also to see them at conferences, to work with them in working groups. And by this, you pool resources, you get access when joining a cost action to other labs, to other research groups, and this is the real benefit, the benefit of cost. This leads, well, hopefully to all kind of impact. Here you recognize the bubbles which were shown before. And this leads to all kind of outputs and impacts. And I will not go into detail, it's too small. The slides will be shared with you anyway. So, but we try to go for scientific and societal impact. So scientific impact is really advancing society for the better, having impact not only on science itself, but also on society. And there's of course a big societal impact. If you join a cost action, your address book will explode. You will meet all relevant people within your field in Europe, and this will have a huge impact in your career in the long term. So I will keep it here, and I will go into more detail on how to join very practical cost action in a few moments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice. We have 10 minutes for questions from the floor. Of course, there will be another session later on in which you can develop further questions, and also around the coffee later you can ask cost team about different aspects of participation. So, if there are questions, yes. فما شكون الميكرو ولا تنجم تعمل اي من غير ميكرو بالقوي عايشك. Can you introduce yourself, please? Thank you. Other questions? Thank you. Another question? Please. قدم روحك عايشك. Thank you. We can start with this first round. I will add my question since I am here, and of course we can link with the next session, because I think also how the country is organized to take advantage of the cost is instrumental in succeeding in having more projects and better projects. Maybe this aspect should also be underlined. You know how countries manage their participation, but the role of the national coordinator, Amani, hello, and what can be done really at the level of awareness raising, at the level of communication, in order to enhance participation. So, please.
Thank you very much. Well, we've already decided that we would together try to cover the questions because some of them are related. It's also your question is related to the question that was asked in the back, from the back of the room. How do I participate? How do I get myself in? I just explained that for the cost member, let's say member countries to say, we have a cost national coordinator, and these people nominate at a maximum 2 people in the management committee of the action. Now, somebody from the Tunisian, let's say, community would participate in the management committee as an observer, but you don't have a formal national coordinator. So what happens in practice is that you contact the action chair, and the action chair, in a dialogue with you, ascertains if there is a mutual benefit. Is there something that you can contribute? And if so, the management committee actually votes to get you in. It's, let's say, a formality. And in the end of the day, also on our side, we have to tick the box, and then you're in. Now, no, sorry, let me put it another way. Of course, you're trying to find out, okay, what actions are interesting to me. We will go into that in more detail in the next session, but I can already explain that, and I think what you mentioned already, that on our website, you can actually look at the list of actions that we have. You can also search on the basis of a keyword, and then you get a number of hits, hopefully. And then you have to check in the so-called memorandum of understanding what the objectives are of this particular action. And if this is something that you feel inspired by, to raise your finger, I would like to contribute. The role of, let's say, the national correspondent, and maybe it is good, I mean, for you to stand up. I mean, this is a very, very important person for you. I mean, our colleague here, Armeni, indeed is doing a tremendous job, first of all, in organizing this day, together with, of course, the colleagues here in the room. And secondly, she is also very much able to answer any questions after we have long gone and left back to Brussels that you may have. There is a remaining question on this touring around in the universities, but that is something that I already touched upon in the conversation, so I think this is something that maybe from the Tunisian side can be answered. But how does it work with people who are not affiliated with an organization? Can they participate or not? I think we have to be clear.
Yes, unfortunately, if you have no affiliation to a university or a company, it's not possible to participate. But it does not have to be a university. It can also be a smaller company, a ministry. So you have to have an affiliation in order to you have to be employed in order to join a cost action.
So just for information, for next steps, we will work on dissemination of costs in coordination with our network in Horizon2020 Management Unit. So with the network of project management officers, with the network of national contact points, I think that you can wait for more events in regions, in institutions, in labs for next week, for next period. Okay, thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Ahmed Malel, NCP, National Contact Point for ICT, and also Assistant Professor at Higher Institute of Applied Science and Technology of Sousse. We will organize the next session training session cost at University of Sousse soon. We will organize this afternoon the date. Thank you.
I think we can move to the second session. It's a good time to move right away. We don't have a break now, but after the session there will be a coffee or networking break. Please.